Hi, welcome to Haengbokaeyo. My name is Portly Gardy Johnson, and this is my podcast. You are currently listening to my first episode. So let's jump in with a little bit about the title of the podcast. So, Haengbokaeyo means I am happy in Korean. I usually use this phrase a lot, like when I'm eating good food, when I'm doing something fun, or just around people I love. I'll just randomly say Haengbokaeyo. Who I am as a person is someone who gets excited about little moments, and so I'll just tend to say that out loud randomly. So in English I would always say I'm happy, but when I was living in Korea for a year, that phrase I was saying it a lot because I genuinely was experiencing new things, going out and trying to make new friends and just having a lot of fun moments. So that phrase came up a lot and I just wanted to be able to say it in Korean. So I asked the friends around me at the time to teach me how to say I'm happy in Korean. And ever since then, it's stuck with me. And now that I've been home, I've still been saying it and using it. I turned 32 this year, and something I've learned just about life and happiness in general is yes, happiness is something that you feel, it'll radiate off your face and you'll feel it throughout your body. And I feel that happiness, it can come to you sometimes unexpectedly, but oftentimes you have to go out and seek that happiness for yourself. And that's what I want to talk to you about with this podcast. I want to talk about life, finding those little moments of joy, just regular everyday things, and just simply being. So let's dive into this first episode, and we're going to talk about me moving to Korea. I've seen this thing where people talk about something that's changed their brain chemistry. And for me, that was moving to Korea. So I want to talk to you about my journey to getting there, what kind of led up to it. So yeah, let's dive right in. Growing up, I was raised by my mom. She's a single mom, and I have an older brother named Fabian. So it was just the three of us. And I remember when I was young, my brother would always monopolize the computer. But as a kid, I didn't really care. But one day I saw him reading what looked like comics on the computer. And I kind of asked him, what are you doing? And he was reading manga, and it turned out to be Naruto. And he showed me the site he was reading it on. So I was able to go and find mangas that kind of spoke to me. And I even shared that with my friends. And so we were all reading it. And so that became a big part of my life. And then it moved on from mangas to Korean dramas. And so I used to watch those all the time. And my mom would want to spend time with me. So she'd come to my room and she'd just lie on my bed while I'd be sitting at the computer chair. And she'd watch the dramas with me. But she'd kind of my bed was kind of far, so she couldn't really read the subtitles, so I would read them to her and tell her what was going on. And I remember watching a full series with her, and it was one of my favorites, and to this day I always remember, and it was called Coffee Prince. So I love that drama. I also really love that memory of spending time with her that way. It's super, super near and dear to my heart. I think that was in middle school or high school, but after high school I knew I was going to go to university, but I thought, okay, after school, I'll get a chance to either live in Korea or something like that. And then I was also thinking that maybe I could do study abroad, and then I could live in Korea for a year while also going to school. So school came around and I did my bachelor's in political science. And while I was there, I didn't really see a lot talking about study abroad. So I didn't really get that opportunity. But I thought, okay, after school, I'm definitely going to live in Korea. And then after I finished my bachelor's, I went on to do my master's. And towards the end of that, I was thinking, okay, definitely after this, I'm going to go and live in Korea. And in actuality, I didn't end up living in Korea until about 5 years after I graduated from my master's program. So after school, I got a job, and, I was just trying to be stable. I lived at home with my brother, and then eventually I got my own apartment. But then COVID hit, and those feelings of longing they were just still there. And I thought, okay, you can, continue working, saving money, but then when are you going to get that opportunity to go? So I was 28 at the time and I quit my job and I applied to the EPIC program. So at the time I'm thinking, I really want to live in Seoul, but I get my placement. I get there, I get my placement, and it's not Seoul. It's actually this small town. It's called Jangan. So I remember the day when I got my placement, I was texting my friend and I was like, okay, let's look it up. Let's see what this place is. And we were like researching and stuff, and we couldn't really see anything like really that stood out. But I was still super happy that I was there. And yeah, I was just like committed to doing this. Another cool thing was the fact that I had a person in my program who's also going to be teaching in the same town as me, and she was from Canada as well. So I was like super, super excited to have someone with me. She was my roommate when we were doing orientation for the program. And so I was just super happy to have like someone who was kind of from home who would be with me in that small town. So that was really cool. And I remember when we got there that first day, my co-teacher, she came in, picked me up, and we went and we got all like the paperwork for the visa sorted out. And then we headed over to the town into my new apartment. And my new apartment was interesting. So like it was actually really big. So I was super, super worried that my apartment would be small because you see online that usually you get like a one room, which is like a bachelor studio, and that's your space. So I had prepared myself, but I knew in my heart that that's not what I had wanted, but I prepared myself. But I ended up getting a really nice apartment. It was like on the ground floor of a building, and it was a living room, a room for a TV, it had the kitchen, and it had my bedroom all separate. So that was really cool. The biggest adjustment I would say was the bathroom. The bathroom was like a wet room, and it kind of looked like a gym, like, like that gym that you shower in that's like in school. So it was kind of a little dingy, but I got used to it. And yeah, eventually it was home. However, it was still a little bit of an adjustment, like actually a major adjustment, because I remember in terms of lesson planning, that was something I'd never done before. So I remember staying up until midnight some nights in the first few months, or maybe the first month, just like kind of getting acclimated, trying to figure out how to make my lessons and stuff like that. So that was pretty hard to get used to. And also, my Korean wasn't that good at the time, so I could speak a little, like just the hi and the little simple things, but I found that it was hard to connect with the teachers at school because, yeah, it was just hard. In general, though, most of the teachers were pretty cool. It just took us longer to get connected because we didn't speak the same language, and eventually we got there. But the students themselves, they were amazing. Just honestly the sweetest ever. They I didn't expect this, but most days they would be like, teacher, you're so beautiful. So they were amazing. They were the sweetest. And I was able to make a lot of friends from orientation. So every weekend I was going out to have adventures with them. We'd go to Seoul. One of them lived in Suncheon, and then one of them lived in Gwangju. So Gwangju was like an hour from me, and that was like the big city, which it had all the shopping stuff like H&M, Zara, like everything that you would want. It was in Gwangju. My town itself was really small. It had like fast food restaurants and stuff, but it didn't have the shopping things that we I like H&M and all that stuff. But one thing about my small town, it was filled with nature. So that was really cool. So I love my small town, but I really loved the opportunity to go out and spend time with my friends. And we were doing that almost every weekend. So with the new friends, we'd go out, we'd take, those strips of pictures together, we'd eat together, and it was just a good time. We'd also go drinking together and we'd go to clubs together, and it was a really fun time. And I think I'll tell you a good memory. I remember one night, this was in February, we had all gone out to the club, and we had gone to a couple clubs actually, and just like feeling the vibe in each club. And towards the end of the night, maybe it was around 1 a.m., 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., the last club we had gone in, it was okay, and we'd come outside, and I noticed there's two guys standing there, and one of them had said in Korean that he was cold, he was feeling cold, and me in my drunken state, I had those little things, those hand warmers, I had them in my pocket. And I remember taking one and like putting it on his face so he could be warm. And he turned around and he said, "Oh, you understood what I said." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And we ended up drinking with those two guys for the rest of the night. And it was really cute. We got to know them. One of them, he said he was actually like a monk, and he just stopped that like recently. So I was like, "You're a monk? I want to like see proof." So he pulled out his phone and kind of showed us like clips of him being interviewed as a monk, which was kind of interesting. So yeah, we spent like the whole night with them, and then maybe around 4 a.m. we left that bar as it was closing. Well, they walked us home. We got ice cream. So yeah, that was a really good memory. But I think eventually I'm an introvert by nature, so eventually I started to feel drained just with the all like going out a lot. So I think I was searching for that balance. And partially I found that some of the friends I had made, I think in some ways we weren't like a good fit. So it's interesting because I think growing up, I've had the same friends since elementary school. So it's really interesting like going out there and making new friends. And it was like a new skill in the sense that I realized you have to be kind of discerning about the friends that you make. So so I kind of pulled away from some friends and started spending more time by myself and just getting to know the town that I was living in. And early on, I had made a friend just walking around. I noticed a girl and she was black, and in my town, there were like no black people. I didn't see any. So she was the one and only one that I had seen. And it was so, I know it sounds really weird, but when you see someone who looks like you and you're in a place that's far from home, it was like a bonding moment. So we started hanging out, and that was really cool. And then she introduced me to her friends, and her friends were really awesome. And one of her friends that she introduced me to, I still keep in touch with now. And like, I'm super, super happy to have her in my life, even though that I've come home. I'm just, yeah, super, super happy to have her. And even next week, she's going to be coming to visit me. So definitely a good friendship that I've made in Korea. Korea also had some bad moments, I would say. So I'll tell you one story that really, yeah, it really affected me. I think there was a time when I was out during like lunch break, and one of my co-teachers, she came up and she was, we just having small talk and just talking about life, and she'd mentioned that one of the teachers, his son worked at one of the broadcasting companies, and that was the son produced like one of the TV shows like Haengbokaeyo or Music Bank. I can't remember which one, but he was able to get people tickets, and he had offered her and her son tickets, but her son was too young to go. So she was asking me like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go." And I'm a big K-pop fan. Like I love NCT. I love Stray Kids. So yeah, I'm definitely a big fan. So she said, "Okay, I'm going to ask him." And maybe it was like the next day, she told me that she had asked him, and he had said no, because he basically said that he's worried that because I'm a foreigner, I'm going to sell it on the black market, which foreigners are known to do. So he doesn't feel comfortable. And it made me feel really sad to hear that, because my co-teacher that he had offered the tickets to originally, he might have known her for like maybe 1 month, but I'd been there for about 6 months, so he's actually known me longer. And I thought, how sad that you don't know me at all, actually. Like, you, even though we greet each other every morning, we share snacks together, you still had that idea in your mind. And yeah, that was really hurtful, because it just made me feel like, no matter if I show you who I am and that goodness, that brightness, like, you still won't see me. So yeah, that was super, super hurtful. But I would say Korea was filled with more good moments than bad moments. I remember just with one friend, on the one weekend we went out just to explore a different town, and we took the KTX train. And while we were in that town, we rode scooters around, and we were riding scooters like on a, like, basically through the back roads of like a small town, and it just felt so peaceful and so calming. So like, yeah, it there were definitely some really, really good moments in Korea, and it felt like it was a chance for me to grow, to spread my wings. And I learned a lot of Korean, which was really cool. So I could have little conversations. So if I went to the store, if they asked me, do you need a receipt? Do you need a plastic bag? All those stuff I could answer. So yeah, it was really, really cool. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But eventually, towards the end of my first year, I knew I wanted to move to Seoul. Like, I wanted that experience. Like, for me to get to Seoul from my small town, it took 5 hours on the bus. And I would do it some weekends because there was a concert that I wanted to see, or there was something I wanted to do with friends. So I would do it, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be in Seoul, not even having to rent a hotel. So I was committed to trying my best to get there. So I applied again for my second year, still with EPIC. So I still wanted to teach with the public school system. So I applied again, and this time they placed me in a town in Gyeonggi-do, which was like in the surrounding areas of Seoul. So it wasn't directly in Seoul. And they placed me in a little town called Juksan. So it was maybe like an hour and a half from Seoul. So not as far as my old place, but also not as close as I wanted to be. And I think when I first got there, I just felt like, oh, this is definitely not it. It felt like immensely smaller than the town that I had come from. I couldn't see any of the things that I was looking for, like that community, that closeness to Seoul, the expat community, the opportunity to learn Korean, like to take classes. I couldn't picture myself in this town. So maybe I stayed there the first week, and I think the second week I decided, yeah, I want to go home. And I think by me choosing to go home, I wasn't saying like I'm done with Korea completely. I just didn't feel like that space was right for me, and I didn't want to spend the year there and end up miserable and like hating Korea, because I loved it. Like, it has a big place in my heart, so I didn't want that. So I ended up making the decision to go home. And when I got home, it was like I looked around and I could see that, yes, Toronto had changed, but it hadn't changed in like big ways. It was still the same city that I loved, and it still had all the things that I'd left behind. But I was like, oh, I was still thinking, oh, did I make the right decision? And I ended up staying home, and I got a new job that was in my field of political science again. I got a new apartment. I started doing things to immerse myself in home, like loving home again. So I took classes like pottery classes. I just went out and explored places I've never been to before. My aunt and cousin came to visit me. I just immersed myself in home. I truly felt like I began to love home again, and I loved the person who I was growing into, and I still do. And I did miss Korea still. So in September 2024, I went back and I spent time with a friend. We went to Jeju Island where I've never been to before, and it was so, so great. I love that trip. And yeah, I continued to immerse myself in life at home, and work was going well. And I think it was up until June of this year where work kind of took a nosedive, and like I experienced something really traumatic at work, in my opinion. So I'll tell you about that now. When I interviewed for this job, I think one of the things that stood out to me is I had asked like a question about what does the day to day look like as a person within this role? And then the interviewer had mentioned that, they see about 500 applicants a day. I worked at a consulate, so I knew it was going to be fast paced, but I wasn't expecting to deal with that many people. So in my mind, I kind of knew, this might not be a good fit, because I think that pressure of seeing that many people might be a lot. But I thought, you know what, this was the job that I'd gotten at the time. So I'm like, I'm going to go for it. So, fast forward, I'm in the role and I noticed that they put a lot of emphasis on numbers. So they would send out emails saying, good job, guys, you achieved this goal of hitting these amount of numbers. But at the same time, they would also like behind, like when you're sitting down and stuff, they'd come over and they'd say things like, oh guys, we're making mistakes on these little things like their names or their birthday and those things like that. And I felt like it was a contradiction, because yes, you're so happy about all the numbers that we're producing and you're pushing us to do more. However, you're upset when we make little mistakes. So for me, I'm like, you need time to process those cases. You can't just kind of push them through. So I felt like rather than just saying, oh, go faster, it needed to be a balance. And I don't think they had that balance. And I recognized that right away. So I was like, this is not looking too positive. And eventually there came a time where they sent me an email one day about my performance, and they sent it at, I think it was 3:50, and we go home at 4. And it just said, we know you've come back from vacation. You recently had COVID, but your numbers are really low. Your performance is really low. And when I saw that, my heart just kind of felt like, what? Because behind the scenes, outside of my numbers, I was doing a lot of work. So I was doing work that wasn't quantifiable by numbers. I was writing reports. I was helping creating SOPs. I was helping my colleagues. So the fact that that email only talked about numbers, I thought, oh, that sucks. Like, you're not seeing me holistically. And so I set up a meeting to talk about those numbers with them, because I felt like those numbers, they were just like a straight pulling of numbers, not like a breakdown, like how many families or just the intricacies that go behind those numbers. So like I wasn't happy. But anyway, eventually we have that meeting. And one of the things that my team lead tells me, she's just like, look at this person's number. This person started after you, but their numbers are much higher than yours. And I remember looking at it and being like, well, I might never get to that number. I might never. But the work that I do is not any less valuable. So I want you to see me holistically. And because it felt awful to be compared to someone else when I knew all the good work that I was doing. So that was a whole thing. But eventually, I moved on to a new team. And in that team, there was a lot of like report writing and things like that. So that felt better. Like you were allowed to take your time, and I enjoyed that. So it was awesome. But I noticed on my new team, my new team leader, he was a micromanager. So that also didn't work for me. So he would, like if you were working on a document and that document was like, in the shared drive, you could see his icon, like just on it as you're working on it. And like that didn't feel good. And just other little things. But, I had worked so hard to get here. And so I didn't want to give up. I wanted to keep going and keep trying. So one day, though, I had a really bad experience. So I had gone on lunch that day, and I remember, well, actually, let's rewind it back really quickly. That day and that morning, I was working on a piece of work that, we each week we'd kind of switch roles on this team. So I was picking up some work that my colleague had been doing the previous week. So when I started, there was this one piece that was left undone or just incomplete. So I had started there. So I was finishing up that work, and it was kind of extra on top of what I was doing. So I finished up that work and I was able to move on to the next set of work. And because of that, I didn't get to take our kind of 10-minute, 15-minute morning break. I just thought, okay, let's just work through, let's get through this, and then we can take a break later. So I end up finishing the work, and lunchtime comes around, and I spend some time speaking with my coworkers as we're sitting down having lunch. And I might have about, let's say, 10 minutes left of my lunch. And my friend, my bestie, she was also going on lunch at the same time. And so I thought, oh, let me go for a little walk with her. And I can talk to her for a bit. So I ended up leaving my colleagues and saying, I'm going to go for a little bit of a walk. See you later. So I left. I called my friend and I went for a walk with her. And towards the end of lunch, I was like, okay, I got to go back, but I'll stay with you for an extra few minutes because, I didn't get to take my break, and I'm enjoying just chatting to you and decompressing and just feeling at peace. So I chatted with my friend for a bit longer. So I ended up coming back to work about 5 minutes late. So I get into the building, I go back to my desk, and as I'm going to sit down, my team lead comes over and he says, oh, can I speak to you? I said, okay. So we go into one of the vacant offices and, he closes the door. So I go to sit down and he goes, oh, no, you don't need to sit. I'm like, okay. So I'm just standing there and he goes, how long is your lunch? And I was like, 45 minutes long. And then he goes, how long did you take today? And so I said, oh, I took a little extra because I didn't actually get to take my morning break. And then his voice gets louder and he goes, you're not allowed to do that without telling me first. You're not allowed to combine your breaks with your lunch. And even if you get an early release, you're not allowed to combine your early release with your lunch. You're not allowed to do that. And then I just said, okay. And then his voice got a bit even louder. And then he was like, this is a verbal warning. And next time you do this, I'm going to have to write you up. So I said, okay. And after that, I went towards opening the door, and he went really quickly to open the door, and he opened it, and the door just shook, and I'm like, oh. And so he opens the door, his face is red, and I'm kind of shocked because it's in my mind, I'm you didn't really feel the need, you didn't want to speak to me. You just wanted to berate me for something. You didn't even want to listen or understand what I was saying to you. You just thought she came back late and that's that. And so, yeah, it felt super uncomfortable. So I ended up going back to my seat and my heart was beating fast. I was super, super uncomfortable. And I thought to myself, okay, what do we do? Because sometimes, I think for me, usually it's just okay, this has happened. Let's let it go. We just keep it moving. But I thought, no, I got to make sure someone knows because it didn't feel right to me. So I sent an email to my manager and I let her know. He said that, my team lead, he said, next time I come back late, he's going to write me up, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't really include the aggressive manner in which he spoke to me, just because I think in that moment, I kind of felt was it my fault? And so that kind of stop me from writing like the way he spoke to me, even though that really did bother me. So I sent it to her and I CC'd him and I sent it off. I will like preface though that like I actually would always eat my lunch at my desk. And I was always like very conscious of like if I was working on extra work and I started my lunch a bit later, I was always very conscious about making sure that I took the exact 45 minutes, not over. So I thought that's definitely not me. So for this to come out of nowhere just felt really, really bizarre and like unwarranted. So anyway, fast forward, I sent the email. My manager, she sends me back an email saying, just like continue to trust in us, continue to like do your work and, just that kind of stuff. But on the side, she messaged me and she said, I know this must be really hurtful, but just know he really wants you on the team and stuff like that. And so I said, okay. And that night I went home and I just thought to myself, okay, I worked so hard to be here. I'm gonna just keep going. Just don't converse with him too much outside of your work. Just do, answer the questions that you're asked, do the work that you're supposed to do, and just keep it moving. That's the way I felt. And that's the way I thought I would, continue on. But yeah, the next day comes around and I'm, trying to carry out that plan, not conversing too much, just doing my work. And my team lead, he comes over and he says to me, can we speak? And I'm like, okay. So, but this time I was like, okay, I am not going to be caught off guard. So we went to another room. This time the door didn't close, but I had my hand on my hip. I had my ID badge in my hand and I was kind of like tapping it. And I was just like, I'm going to listen, but like if he's aggressive, I'm going to be prepared. So I'm in the room and he starts off by saying, I just want you to know it wasn't my intention to make you feel like you have to count the minutes of your lunch. And in my head, I'm just like, what? What, like, that's a direct contradiction to what you were saying yesterday. So he goes on and he says, I don't actually care how long you take for your lunch. It's other people that care. So you can take as long as you want. It's not me that cares. It's other people. And it was just something that I observed. And I was like, what? Once again, in my head, I'm like, what? This is like making no sense. He also then just like added to the fact and he just said, I was just trying to protect you. And mind blown. So I just said to him, like, what you said yesterday was, you're going to write me up if I come back late again. And I explained that I just come back late because I didn't get to take my morning break. So as a leader, I would have expected you to understand that and hear that. So how can I not feel like I have to count the minutes of my lunch? And he then just said, like, sometimes my intentions mixed with your reactions cause the issue. And he then just like gestured to me with his hand and he was like, look at the way you're reacting now. And I was just like, oh, in my head, I was so mind blown, so upset, just so sad. So sad. And he wanted to like shake my hand after everything. And I just told him like, no, I don't want to shake your hand. And I said, like, I've lost a bit of trust and respect in you as a team lead. Like, and he said, like, trust, but like whenever your name's not brought up in situations where they're talking about business trips and like who gets to go on the business trip and stuff like that, I bring your name up. And in my head, I'm like, that doesn't matter. I don't trust you to make decisions like that are based on you listening to me and understanding me. I just don't trust you. So I remember putting my hands in my pocket and I'm like, no, I'm not going to shake your hand. Like I told him I'm part of your team, and I'm going to do my best, but that's just it. And after that, we left the room. And I remember also when we were speaking, there was times where he was like trying to tell me to like, shh, don't talk too loud or whatever. And it was just, yeah, it was crazy. So I remember going to the bathroom afterwards, and I cried because I felt like he wasn't taking accountability. What he was doing was saying, I said all this, I did all this, but it's your fault. Your reactions are the biggest thing here. So it doesn't matter what I did, but look at the way you're presenting yourself. That's what matters. And in that moment, in the first meeting that I had with him, and as well as the second one, the first one, all I said to him was okay. I wasn't rude. I wasn't presenting myself in any manner that could have been taken that way. Also, in the second meeting, yes, I had my hand on my hip. Yes, I was tapping my card, but I had the right to be upset. The things that he had said for me felt so unwarranted. So I had the right to feel my feelings. And I remember actually telling him in that meeting that my feelings are valid and I have the right to feel them. And you don't say those things like, oh, my feelings are valid and I have the right to feel them, unless someone is making you feel like you don't. So I definitely felt like in that meeting, he was trying to take away from what he had done, not say sorry, not take accountability by just saying, look at the way you're reacting. And so, yeah, that sucked. And honestly, I cried because there's that stereotype about Black women. Like, we are aggressive, we are overly emotional. And I felt like he was saying, like, look at the way you are reacting. Look at you. Like, I'm the problem. And in no way, shape, or form in that moment was I the problem. So, like, it felt just like, yeah, he was playing into those stereotypes, and it really, really bothered me. Okay, so back to me crying in the bathroom. I'm in there for maybe 10 minutes. I then step outside, and I remember my manager had seen me later in the day, and I think before lunch, and she'd saw that, I looked visibly upset. And we went out to lunch, and I cried, and we talked about it, and I told her the aggressive way he behaved yesterday, the things he said today. And she said, like, that's not right. He shouldn't have said those things. Like, there's no place for that in the workplace. And, training will be done. Training needs to be done. And I will speak to him. And so I felt good. I felt heard. But the next day, when I had come into the office, I remember just feeling so vulnerable and like, I let everything out in the open. Like, I cried. I was like, I really let them see how much I was hurting. And I felt I think I felt, vulnerable, a little bit ashamed, and a little scared. So I was trying to just go to my desk when I came in the morning. But my manager, she said, she pulled me aside and she just said, I talked to him, and he said that he was just trying to be a good team lead, and he apologized to her in that meeting. And so she told me, let's let it go. And I know myself, I am a people pleaser. So in that moment, because I'm feeling like vulnerable and I'm feeling scared, I want it just to go away. I said, and I felt unsupported. So I just said, yeah, I'll just, I hear what you're saying. So like, I'll take that into consideration, and I'll just, that's okay. And then I went back to my desk, and a couple more things happened. And to be honest, that was in June, and the months after that were the most anxious months I've ever felt. So I just felt awful, and I couldn't for the life of me understand why. I was like, what's going on? Like, why do you feel this way? And it was only until I had COVID, and I had time at home, and I was really just doing nothing, that I was really, really thinking. And I was like, you know what? That wasn't handled in a way where I feel supported, where I feel seen, where I feel heard. And I thought, nah, this wasn't good. So I thought, I'm going to look for a new job. I'm going to leave this space. And another incident ended up happening, and I ended up telling them I'm going to leave. I what happened that first time with my team lead was not good, and it left me feeling unsupported. And I let them know that. And they tried to get me to stay, trying to say, like, we'll move you to a different team, et cetera, et cetera. But I knew that wasn't the right thing for me. What I wanted them to do was address the harm. Moving me to another team, I would have, I think later on internalized the thought that I'm the problem. I'm the one that had to be moved, rather than addressing him and the way he conducted himself, the things that he said. And that would have been a more meaningful decision taken by management. And that would have made me feel supported, seen, heard, all the stuff. But just moving me to a different team was not going to fix the issue. And through sharing the story with some coworkers, I learned that this was not just a one-time thing. This was a pattern, and he had done this before to other people. So I definitely felt like I was making the right decision for me. So I ended up quitting. It definitely wasn't an easy decision. I remember just thinking, is this the right move? I haven't saved up enough money to basically support myself through this. Is this the right thing to do? But I just realized that staying wasn't the right thing for me. I wouldn't have felt like I could show up authentically in that space anymore if I basically did what they wanted and kind of endured the pain and just took it in and just dealt with it on my own and just moved on. That for me wasn't the right thing to do. I remember reaching out to an old manager of mine. We discussed what had happened, and this was, I think, right after I'd handed in my resignation letter and I was giving them 2 weeks notice. And she brought up things words like psychological safety in the workplace. And to be honest, I didn't even know what that was. But that's basically the safety that you feel in knowing that you can bring up things, you can talk about things and give your input without just worrying that I guess there'll be repercussions and things like that. And we talked about microaggressions and things like that. So when I quit, I made sure I wrote a letter to HR, and I wrote that, what I experienced was a microaggression. And I felt like by him saying, look at the way you're reacting, he was feeding into stereotypes about Black women, that we're loud, we are aggressive, and therefore saying that I'm not allowed to show up. And I was nowhere any of those things, but he was saying that my presence and the way I was showing up was wrong. And yeah, that was awful. So I made sure I wrote that in that letter. I wrote about psychological safety, and I just wanted it to be there on record. So if this happened to someone else, it would be there and they could rely on that, and it wouldn't just be unfounded. So that person wouldn't feel alone. So I felt really good about that decision. It was 100% a hard decision to make, but it reinforced for me that in order for me to show up authentically as my full self, I need to feel safe. I need to feel like I belong, and that workplace wasn't allowing that. So I knew I needed to move on and find that place for myself, find that realignment and work on that. So that's where I am now. A few months ago, after quitting, I wouldn't have said that Haengbokaeyo reflects the feelings like I am happy. That wouldn't have been where I was at. But I can 100% say that where I am now is that place. I am happy. There are good days, there are bad days, and I still feel those. But I feel like I honored myself through that moment. I've honored myself through exploring Korea, through coming home, getting a job, rebuilding, and I'm honoring myself as I take the time to explore where I want to go next. I hope to share this journey with you guys through my podcast, and I hope that you get some inspiration from my stories, the stories that I'm going to tell, the stories that I have told. And yeah, I just hope you feel like if you're in the midst of making a hard decision and you don't know which way to turn, just know that whatever decision you make, someone's there supporting you. And I don't know, you might not be able to see them, you might not be able to hear them, but just know that I support you. So I hope you'll be able to draw this energy, this Haengbokaeyo energy from this podcast going forward. Thank you so much for tuning into my first episode. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Please continue to listen to the next episodes that I put out. Until then, I hope you continue to find and enjoy the little happy moments in your life.